Come in, come in. It's nice to see you. How's yourself? You're looking grand. Tack your ease, we'll try to please you. Man, you're welcome. Here's my hand. Was the way Andy Stewart used to welcome us to the TV programme The White Heather Club. That's if you're old enough to remember that or admit you watched it. Just for a laugh, my mother would open the door to one of my younger cousins and welcome him like this. They both had a good laugh. It was a cheery welcome, an inviting welcome. When have we ever given God such a welcome into our churches, hearts and lives in this way? Unfortunately, it is not the kind of welcome Moses, the leader of God's people, receives on his return to the desert camp in Sinai from his 40 days and 40 nights summit meeting with the Lord on top of Mount Sinai. Time spent receiving the tablets of the law and instruction for God's chosen people. This leader certainly has his fair share of trouble with his people. 600,000 men plus women and children. Who would be a leader? Moses has been up and down the mountain several times, carrying messages from God to the Israelites, the 10 Commandments and laws covering all of life's eventualities, how to deal with Hebrew slaves, personal injuries, protection of property, social responsibility, laws of justice and mercy, Sabbath laws, and 3 annual festivals. This time he is on the mountain top with the Lord a bit longer than usual, receiving instructions about the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, instructions on the fixtures and fittings of the tabernacle, the design of the priestly garments, and the consecration of the priests. Moses' long audience with God should not have been a problem, as at the suggestion of his father-in-law, Moses' very tiring workload with the people is reduced. He selects capable men from all the people, God-fearing, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, appoints them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties and tens. Exodus 18 verses 19 to 22 tells us, have them serve as judges for the people, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. In effect, he has a group of elders, responsible people with various skills to help him with his work among God's people, the congregation of Israel. Moses leaves Aaron in charge to deal with and settle any disputes among the people. But down in the desert below, as God observes, things are not as they should be. The people are disgruntled. Surprise, surprise. Fed up waiting for Moses to return. Where is he? Is he coming back? Moaning and groaning at Aaron, no patience to wait on Moses or the Lord. These are the people of the covenant, an agreement confirmed by both parties. The Lord will be their God, and they will be his obedient people. In Exodus 19, Moses conveys God's words to the Israelites. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They agree to God's terms and conditions. Now Israel is full of corruption, disobedience reigning among this stiff-necked people. God's anger is at boiling point. to the point destruction is on his mind. His presence will not go with them any further on their journey to the land flowing with milk and honey. Moses pleads their case before he descends the mountain, carrying in his arms the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets, the work of God, the writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. Moses enters the camp into the middle of the golden calf debacle. The people dancing, running wild, out of control, a laughing stock to their enemies. Worshipping and feting a God fashioned by their own hands, praising an inanimate, powerless object, giving it the glory for things it did not and could not do, giving it the glory for the work of the Lord, the laws of idolatry and many others in tatters. Angry, he threw the tablets of the law out of his hands, breaking them into pieces. Aaron gets it in the neck. He should have been taking his leadership role seriously in the absence of Moses. He fails miserably as one of God's leaders. He goes with the flow of popular opinion of the people. He leads them in the ways of the world, not in the ways of the Lord. Moses took charge of the situation as God's leader should, destroying the golden calf and bringing the Lord's judgment down on them. They sinned, and now he will go back to the Lord to try to make atonement for their sin. One commentator put it this way: in Exodus 33, we see Israel in panic mode. God's people are in triage management after the golden calf debacle. As individuals, a community, a state and nation in the making, Israel realises the severity of their actions. Self-inflicted wounds that tore their whole community apart, their godly covenant broken, their leaders stunned. Where does this leave them now? How do they go forward from here? Israel is in deep trouble. Will they maintain their presence as a nation? Will God's presence continue with them on their journey? Nagging questions and doubts plague Moses. Who is Israel without God? Their existence as a nation is only viable on condition of God's presence. Israel is not unique among the nations unless its identity is centred on God. God is furious with them, his anger burning within him, ready to give them a taste of his wrath. Moses, as their leader, is not confident in himself. He's dependent on the Lord for his leadership of the people, dependent on the presence of God, as is the whole nation, without whom they are nothing special or any different from any other people group. Here he is left to pick up not only the pieces of the tablets of stone, but to pick up the remnants of the covenant, pick up what is left of Israel's relationship with the Lord, to try to make amends for their idolatry, faithlessness, and total disobedience. It's the Lord's decision, his choice whether the blessing of his presence remains or is removed from them. As he later told Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. Here we are, God's people of the 21st century. We haven't replaced his chosen people, Israel. They have been hardened in part until the full number of Gentiles has come in. This way all Israel will be saved. We have been engrafted into God's people in and through Jesus Christ. We find ourselves in the throes of a pandemic, difficult to see the way forward, straining to find the presence of God. Is God's presence still with us? Is he thinking of, or has he removed from us, the blessing of his presence? Why would God consider removing his presence from the midst of his church, his people? Let us try to look at things from God's viewpoint. What does he see when looking in on us in comparison to the Israelites? We come to worship each Sunday, his people called by his name, his church as a whole. Is he pleased with what he sees? Maybe's aye, maybe's no. Yes, we have ministers, good leaders, who constantly seek the presence of the Lord, who look to Jesus as their perfect example of faithful, prayerful obedience to God. Those who preach the gospel, who like Eric and I do our best to preach or speak straight from the word of God each week. We have elders who take their role seriously, who know and understand the responsibilities of that role. They too have been ordained as spiritual leaders in congregations. This doesn't let congregations off the hook. We are called to be a priesthood of all believers. Therefore, we all have spiritual responsibilities, to be obedient to God, to be obedient in the promises or vows made when joining his church. For a good number of years, things have been going awry in our Christian church communities. We have some who preach a gospel that runs counter to the word of God, which more often aligns itself to the ways of the world, an anything goes type of gospel that goes with the flow of world opinion. Ministers, elders and congregations who find this a more congenial way to get on in and with the world, promoting a warped image of God and his word. The church gone a bit errant or rogue, some favouring a God they have created to their own specifications, rather than the God of the Bible and creation, appearing to have no fear of the wrath of God. In some ways, some of us are like the Israelites. We can be seen to have our own present-day idols: mobile phones, computers, TVs, wealth, position, perhaps even hedonistic lifestyles, running wild, out of control, totally disobedient to the Lord and his ways, a laughing stock to the unbelieving communities around us. We profess to be followers of Christ, but our whole demeanour says otherwise. Some of us don't give him the time of day from one week's end to the other. Our attention everywhere, but seeking the presence of the Lord. If God decides to remove the blessing of his presence from the church, what then? Remember, God said, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. We may find ourselves in triage management. Who are we as a group of people? Who are church congregations as a whole, minus the presence of the Lord? Without the presence of the Lord, there is nothing that sets us apart as special or different from other people groups. Through his conversations with the Lord, Moses knows he has the Lord's favour. It is because of that favour he pleads the case of the Israelites. Moses leads the Israelites by God's command. He takes his role seriously. He sticks with it. He's a brawler. Presenting different case scenarios to God on the future of the nation of Israel, he shows his dependence and that of the nation on God for their very existence, their identity centred on him. Moses demonstrates his willingness to learn more of God's ways, to know him more, to continue to find favour with the Lord. The Lord hears him. The Lord hears him out, grants his request to go with him because he is pleased with Moses. What about the church? We need to take a leaf out of Moses' book. As we in Paisley South embark on the next stage of our journey to find a new minister, a new leader, one appointed by God. It is for us to rely on the presence of the Lord to steer us from this oasis in the desert to the land flowing with milk and honey, all fulfilling our roles. Seriously seeking the Lord's presence as a congregation, doing their best to be faithful, prayerful, obedient believers, living up to the honour of being called by his name. God's people in a fit state and in a right place with him, leading by example, confident to unveil that inviting welcome, not only to the new minister, but to Jesus as he knocks on our church doors, hearts and lives. Come in, it's nice to see you. How's yourself? You're looking grand. Take your ease, we'll try to please you. Man, you're welcome. Here's my hand. Amen.